Welcome to Trigger Talk, your place for everything first-person shooters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and so much more. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. We've got some huge news that we're going to be jumping into on this week's episode. We've got details on the next Battlefield game, so let's jump in. This was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Yeah, I didn't expect anything until probably early next year. And like we all knew that they were going to announce something. So we all knew something was coming eventually, but I didn't expect it this early. And even them just kind of acknowledging Battlefield, I didn't really expect them to do that until they were ready to like say, all right, here's the title and here, we're getting ready for the lead up. But we've actually got a fair amount of news before we even got we don't know the title and stuff. We don't technically know. I guess we know a little bit about the setting, but not, a crazy amount. So it's kind of a weird way to, I wouldn't say a weird way to do it. It's weird for them to do it this way. I feel like this isn't how they usually approach it. So I'm kind of excited. I think it's good I think we sort of need it because usually the next game would be coming out now. So yeah, we've kind of got a year to kill here where we haven't usually had that before. So I think they are going to need to do this. I think we need like a long build up where maybe we get really early in the year a title announcement and just like a teaser. It doesn't need to be an actual trailer or something, just like a little tease and kind of drip feed stuff to us rather than waiting till like June or July and then just bombarding us because we need something along the way. Otherwise we're just, people will kind of, not that that's how it works, but people will kind of forget about Battlefield. We haven't really had any, updates or anything since months ago. Well, I mean, there was an update like a few weeks back for 2042, but you know what I mean? There hasn't been any big seasons and stuff in a long time. So interesting approach, but yeah, I'm very happy that we're finally getting some stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was quite the interesting thing, too, because it wasn't really on my radar, but they had this like big investors kind of summit thing where they got on stage and talked a lot about the details around EA in general, going up Andrew Wilson, talking about, we're going to put AI in everything. And then all the stuff like generally about gaming. Then we got, bam, the big news. I think it first kind of broke with IGN's interview, and then subsequently a lot of the footage from that event came out, and we've got a lot of details on what the heck's going on. First of all, I've just got a list here from Battlefield Bulletin of I'm going to list them all, and then we'll break down in terms of like what our thoughts are. Modern setting, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 type era. Tom Henderson from Insider Gaming says about set anywhere between 2027 and 2030, that general era. Near future, all-out warfare, air, land, and sea. Maps, well-designed play spaces that are more akin to previous Battlefields. 64 players, no specialists. The class system is back. Natural disasters and events being developed by DICE, Motive, Ripple Effect, and Criterion. They're expanding the Battlefield universe. 2025 release window. EA is playtesting the game every week and plans to launch a community program next year with the concept art revealed. So that's just a general overview of the things that are going on. It's crazy. Many times they said this is a back to basics approach, which is something we've talked about in the podcast for, it feels like years now.
It feels like really since the start of 2042, we kind of like, all right, let's start thinking about the next one. So it's been a while, but yeah, it's good. I'm happy. Everything they've said has made me happy. Now it's all talk, so obviously we need to see it. But I'd rather hear this than like, we're going bigger and better. We're trying to evolve it, that type of lingo. Which I think in the previous investor call, obviously this one was kind of different. I didn't know about this either. They had that like on the screen. It was like a PowerPoint presentation, whereas usually it's just a call. In the last call, they did say something about like, I can't remember exactly.
A new foundation for Battlefield.
Something about like just the way that they phrased it. It just sounded like we were all like, no, please don't. Like,
Yeah,
changing.
Foundation for a Connected Universe. It
Yeah.
was some kind of weird statement around
Yeah.
Battlefield getting bigger.
Yeah, which please, please no.
Terrifying when we heard it in that form. Overall, while I wasn't necessarily prepared for the actual event itself, it was very exciting. There were a lot of mentions around Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 and how those were kind of like the heights of Battlefield, and that's something that they're intentionally looking at. I have a screenshot here from one of the developers, and they said, second Battlefield that I'm working on and sticking to the classic recipe. Battlefield 3 and 4 had scoreboard at launch after all, right?
I love that they're being a bit, and like that to me, that's a really good way to approach it, is to kind of banter themselves a little bit and go, okay,
Yeah,
like,
own
we
it.
know we messed up a bit, and like we're gonna. If they just avoid all that stuff, it just comes across like they've almost in a stubborn way, and it's like they don't want to learn from it. But those little comments like that, and I've seen a lot of, like, it's crazy because obviously I follow so many Battlefield devs, and just for the last like year or so, I haven't really been paying attention that much. As well as I feel they haven't been tweeting as much. And now on the day that this dropped, there was like 30 developers just all tweeting like how excited they were and stuff. And it's just good to see that that's the approach they're taking, that they're kind of like, yeah, owning the fact that 2042, albeit when it, you know, its final product is it's a decent shooter, but it's not Battlefield and it didn't launch well. And yeah, I think that's the way to do it, to kind of poke fun at themselves and, you know, yeah, I think that's something the community will really appreciate.
It even goes further to Vince Zappella's interview on IGN. Daddy Zampella, as we call him. And he was asked around specialists and that they're gone. And he says, so I wasn't here for 2042. I don't know what the rationale was, but for me, it's like the team tried something new. You have to applaud that effort. Not everyone liked it, but you've got to try things. It didn't work. It didn't fit. Specialists will not be coming back. So classes are kind of at the core of Battlefield, and we're going back to that. This game, obviously, we'll have to wait and see. A lot of this is like, I saw this one meme, and it was like a clown. It was like me getting ready to get hyped up for a Battlefield game coming up soon. So there's a lot of this that we have to kind of like temper our expectations, because we saw how 2042 went. But as far as what they've announced so far, this seems like the anti-2042.
Yeah, it legitimately does. And like, that's the thing. It's so ironic because I think on the very last podcast, or maybe the one before that, I was saying how, you know, I'm going to be really cautious with this next one. And even though I'll always be excited, I'll try and be more cautiously optimistic. But like, as soon as I see that concept art, I'm like a giddy little kid that's like, oh my god, Battlefield's back, I'm so excited. So it's hard to rein my emotions in. I will say that I still, you know, we all still need to see the actual, whether it's, obviously we won't see gameplay straight away, but like trailers and stuff, just to get a vibe for the setting and the, I guess, overall vibe of the game. If it's goofy looking, again, we're going to be disappointed and stuff. But from what we do know so far, I think it's okay to be optimistic about it, because everything they have said is pretty much the polar opposite of what the last few Battlefields have done, and that's what we all sort of have issue with. So
yeah,
the thing is, we know DICE can make a good game. Now, whether they make it on launch is a different story, but we know that, like, I have complete faith in the Battlefield team in terms of once we let them cook, they tend to make good games. Even 2042 and Battlefield 5, which didn't launch well, and they're probably two of the worst Battlefield games we've had, they still ended up good. And so I think the thing for me is it's all about the vision of the game, because I know that if they're all aligned in their vision, and I guess the vision of the game is what we as the fans want as well, then I'm not so much concerned, outside of like obviously bugs and stuff. That's also been an issue with DICE, but I just feel like if they have the right plan, I feel like it will end up a decent game. Now, again, that's not a guarantee, because it could be just an absolute mess at launch again. And I probably would be thinking that the fact that it's got an extra year, though, is the part that then makes me feel, okay, I'll give that the benefit of the doubt. They've taken longer with this one than they ever have. And so I think all the signs right now are pointing towards it sounds good, but again, we do need to be cautious and not gas them up too much because we need to actually see it firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On that note as well, in the IGN interview, Vince Zampella says this. Yeah, it's definitely betting bigger on Battlefield. It's going in and expanding what Battlefield is. We have to have the core. The core Battlefield players know what they want. They've been with us forever. They've been amazing supporters. We need to earn their trust back and get them back on our side. And then it's expanding out and getting more players into the universe and seeing what we can do. So when you want a different experience, you don't have to leave Battlefield. You can experience more things within the Battlefield universe. So we're expanding the offerings that we're giving. What does this sound like, Sammy?
It sounds like we're going back to Battle Royale. Which I'm very torn on.
Basics, we're going to have the core, but also whatever the heck Ripple Effect is doing.
Mm. Yeah, I'm very torn on that. It's part of me, like I'm a big Battle Royale guy, but I will say the last probably 2, even potentially 3 years, what are we, 2024? I guess, no, Warzone 2 came out in 2022. So I'd probably say the last 2 years, I just haven't played any BRs. It got kind of stale for me. Granted, I don't play Fortnite. I'm sure if I was like a big Fortnite guy, I'd still be loving it. But it just, the ones I was playing, they became stale. And so there's part of me that's like, okay, I think we're past that era, aren't we? There was the big BR boom that happened, and it feels like we're sort of past that. But then I also go, well, Fortnite's still the biggest game out there, and that's a BR. And Apex has crazy numbers, and that's a BR. And the only reason Warzone isn't killing it is because they've just kind of butchered that completely. It's not necessarily just to do with the genre. So yeah, I'm just torn. I think if they get it right, it could be huge. I think that I always said about Firestorm, if that was free and also wasn't like Battlefield 5 had its own issues that I think it never was going to like save that game. But if let's just say that was like Battlefield 4 or even Battlefield 1, right? And it had that exact Battle Royale, but it was free, that would have blown up. That would have been absolutely enormous. And so, yeah, I think if they get the game right, and the thing for me is that even as much of a BR guy as I am, I want the core game to be the focus. They need to get that right before the single player and before the Battle Royale. That the multiplayer, conquest and rush and that is what they need to nail. They need to prioritize that, and then from there, hopefully the rest of it's good as well. But I do think also if the core game is really good, let's just say we actually have like the first good Battlefield launch in like over a decade.
Hold your horses there, Sammy. That's asking for a lot.
I know, it actually really is, which is quite sad. But like, let's just say that
I would put money on a close quarters city map over a good launch in Battlefield.
Yeah, legit. Which is, yeah, it's actually genuinely depressing. But if they can get the launch right, which again, I go back to the thing of like, we always sort of say that they're rushed. They need to delay them. This one has been technically delayed. It's an extra year. So that's the part of me that goes, and that's not like me going, oh, it's definitely going to be perfect at launch. It's probably still going to have heaps of issues, but
There are a lot of things in this game's favor. They aren't switching to a new engine where they spend about 18 months of the 3-year life cycle or whatever that they have to develop the game on fixing the engine. Like, that's not something that they have to worry about with this launch. So there are things in their favor.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think that Frostbite 5 was like, or is it Frostbite 5 or 4 that we're currently on? I can't remember. I want to say it's 5, have no idea. But I'm not sure. Anyway,
I think you're right.
The new Frostbite, that did feel better than the old one in terms of, remember like how we were saying at launch, they like just kill switched Doza's shield. That was something they never were able to do. They had their old engine, and it was the same with Battlefront 2. That's how both of us are so aware of this, is that they had such like limitations on what they could do within their own engine. And it's not when it's like an engine issue, you can't fix that. You need literally either to completely rework the engine or you need a new engine. And so I do feel like this next engine is a lot better. I feel like they just fixed bugs a lot quicker in 2042, even though there was still a hell of a lot. And it's not like it was perfect. I definitely think the bug experience was a lot better in this game than previous ones. Most of the issues we saw weren't actual bugs. It was like just the game was not finished. It was issues with the actual assets and stuff, not like, oh, this isn't working as intended. So I just think, that in combination with they've had more time with this engine, the same people who worked on 2042, we always go back to how they had a very young team. They're still probably, in the grand scheme of things, they're probably still a young team, but they have an extra 3 years of experience. So I just think kind of every area is a lot more in their favor, like you said, than it was. Like 2042, it felt like everything was against it. They had a new engine, COVID, new console generation. They were kind of coming back from Battlefield 5, so that was one that they really needed to like nail, where I guess it's still the same with this one. But there was just a lot going on with that game that felt... It got in their way a little bit, and I feel like there is kind of nothing in their way necessarily with this one, and that's also comes with more pressure, though. I guess that's the flip side to that argument, is that there is kind of no excuses with this one, in my opinion. If this one sucks, like I was a little bit lenient on them in 2042 because we knew all the issues, even just COVID itself. Like they launched a game.
Yeah, and I've got it confirmed. It was 18 months of the Battlefield 2042 development cycle was dedicated to fixing the engine.
Yeah, see, that's like crazy. So they pretty much made that game in 18 months. So like...
Yeah, pretty much.
That's mental. That's not really something that ever happens. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. If we compare that to now, they're going from pretty much an 18-month time span, let's even be generous and say 2 years, to now 4 years. They're doubling the time frame. So it just all adds up to a situation where it feels like there's nothing really getting in the way of this one, and it just feels like if they just have the right concept for the game and they stick to it, it feels a lot more likely that this one will do well. Again, that's not a guarantee. We know that about DICE, that you could say the same about a lot of... Like Battlefield 4, that was pretty much just a carbon copy of Battlefield 3, and they still messed the launch of that up. So it's not impossible, but yeah, I feel a lot more optimistic about this one while still, trying to be very cautious, because I don't want to get hurt for the freaking 18th time in a row.
I've been hurt too much. Yeah. There's a lot going into this game's favor. First of all, I mean, you've got Vince Zampella, who seems a lot more involved, which is good.
Yeah.
Byron Beatty is also taking a much bigger role in this game, and he was one of the key people early on with Call of Duty. So you've got Vince Zampella, one of the creators of Call of Duty, Byron Beatty, one of the creators of Call of Duty, who are also big fans of Battlefield. Battlefield has had a huge impact on gaming just as an industry, especially in the scale of what people expect from a first-person shooter. We've got the fact that they aren't going into a completely new version of Frostbite. Also, on that note, the last engine was Frostbite 3. They haven't confirmed it's Frostbite 4. They just call it a new Frostbite version.
Yeah, I feel like that's what the thing that threw me off is. I think it's actually just called Frostbite now. I could be wrong on that.
From what I'm finding, that's the case.
Yeah, I remember they showed that, you know how there's like the I guess the logo for the Frostbite is like, it's like a shattered like hand sort of shape.
Yeah.
I remember just seeing like when that all happened, the new version of that picture, and I think it just said Frostbite. So that's, I think, the thing that threw me is that I lost the number. And also I think for some reason I thought we were further along than Frostbite 3, because I feel like I could have sworn Frostbite 3 was like back in Battlefield 4, but then actually now that I think of it, I think that was Frostbite 2. So I don't know.
Well, Frostbite 3 came out in 2013, so you're not far off.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like that.
And that's kind of
going
crazy,
on.
isn't it? When you think about like that, the engine that they were pretty much reworking for the previous game came out in 2013. So like no wonder they needed to rework it. It was probably so old at that point. Which is
Also, most of the people that were involved with the process of making Frostbite as an engine,
they moved on.
They left.
Yeah. I think I remember
so
hearing that was like
so
the
long.
key issue was that they had to rework it, and they essentially had like 0 people on the team who even knew how to do that. So they had to it's pretty much like a ground up new engine. I think that may be why they called it just Frostbite, because it's like it's not really the next iteration of Frostbite. It's pretty much just like a refresh or a reboot of that engine in a way.
Yeah. So there's stuff like that. It seems like there's a much stronger team on this part. In terms of what the individual studios are doing, we have DICE focusing on the multiplayer, Criterion assisting with the multiplayer, and then Criterion and Motive are working on the single player, with Ripple Effect focusing on something new to the Battlefield universe. Everything's trending very heavily in the Battle Royale space, which I would love to see a bigger focus from them on. And I think Battlefield 2042 really struggle with this problem of like, yes, you're doing a live service, but why is it so important to do that in Battlefield? What are you leveraging in Battlefield that will help you be effective in live service? And I think there are things you can do within a Battle Royale, specifically on the destruction side of things. Could you imagine instead of like the ring or something that's shrinking, like as the game progressive, it makes you more intentional to go to a specific area because of the destruction on the map.
Yeah, like that's...
Or like they're saying natural disasters or events. Like that could be the thing. That's what's made Battlefield special for decades.
Yeah, that whole thing with Firestorm, the fact that it was just... I know that's a small thing, but like the fact that it was fire instead of like gas did make it feel very like... to me, it felt more
Battlefieldy.
Yeah, and it felt like scarier. I was like, "Holy shit!" There's a massive wall of fire coming. Like that just felt. It felt more claustrophobic, which I think is good for a game like this. So, and yeah, like I want them. This is kind of what we've been saying for years now. That like, I want them to go back on the front foot and be the ones leading the industry in those sorts of areas where they used to sort of push those areas that no one else did. So. Yeah, I think especially a Battle Royale, I know they sort of had that in Firestorm, but I don't even really count Firestorm as existing because like no one played. It was dead within like 3 months. Like I think I played genuinely 2 games of it. So it's like, I don't really consider that a thing. And this would be technically not, but to me and to most people, the first Battle Royale with like really crazy destruction that we would see in you say like a Battlefield 4 or a Bad Company 2. I feel like that is the thing they're going to bring back for this game, is I think destruction will be like a big focus, just because we've seen that in the that like Frostbite sort of preview thing that they showed years ago where they were like blowing up that building and they had the really really like high fidelity face and stuff. It just felt like that was always going to happen with this game, that destruction will be a big focus. So that's one area where like that is a big selling point to, you know, how are you going to get people from Warzone to the Battlefield BR? If it's just the exact sort of same but a different map, no one's going to care. But if you've got all of those COD players looking at, holy shit, you can blow up a whole building, that's crazy. Like that's the sort of thing that brings people in. So I'm keen to see what they do with the BR. I think that after Firestorm, that was like the biggest tease ever, because it was... Honestly, man, it was so good. It had its issues, for sure. The looting system and all that wasn't great, but like the core gameplay, even just I think the core gameplay of Battlefield 5 was pretty solid. The gunplay and everything felt good, and the destruction. The even just little things like the sniping. It was so satisfying to shoot people in the head with the sniper. Little things like that. That was just such a big tease for what I've always wanted with a Battle Royale. But again, now I'm sort of past the BR genre a little bit. This will definitely bring me back if they have one. Like, there's no doubt I'll be playing a lot of that. But yeah, I'm also like on the other side of it. I'm thinking, don't let this take away from the core game. They're gonna need like a crazy, just the live service team is gonna have to be massive just to keep up with all of this, because we can't be having like, you know, the BR mode gets heaps of really awesome updates and then the core game just gets like one map a season still. That's just not good enough. We need heaps of stuff across like every mode. So that's the only concern I have. I hope they're not juggling too many different things, but they have got 4 teams on it. And I think even though we've said sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen, that old saying, like that can happen. But also I do trust every studio that's involved in this game. They're all studios that have made things that I've thought, they're really good at making games, and I'm curious to see how they go, but it's definitely, I think it goes either way. I think it's going to be, you know, the BR could be awesome, or it could just like kill the game. It could be that thing that's like, man, if they didn't do that and they just stuck to the multiplayer, maybe it would have been so much better. So it's definitely a bit nervy. That's to say the very least, but keen to see what they do there.
Yeah, I'm hesitantly optimistic around this idea. I think the landscape of first-person shooters, which we've talked about, has been changing. There's this expectation for games to now be platforms. Like, you look at Fortnite and how they're becoming almost Roblox-esque. There's Roblox, which is, they have games within games, and it's like this platform within this platform. And then you have stuff like Apex and like adding all these different modes. So I think there's benefit to this. But like we've been saying, and like Vince Ampella talks about in this interview, you need to have that core. You need to have the thing that brings people who like Battlefield in to play Battlefield. And then they can also choose to play whatever the Battle Royale mode is, or whatever the spin-off mode is, or play the campaign. And you have people that go to play the spin-off mode that goes to the core Battlefield experience. And there's this ecosystem where people that go to play just the campaign that gets roped into the online experience. Like, there's this ecosystem that once you're in, you can also explore various types of things. The Insider Gaming is also saying that it's going to be a free-to-play Battle Royale, which I think is the best way to do it. Like we've talked about, the reason it has to be. I feel like Hazard Zone would have succeeded if it was free.
Like, I don't even think, I think if it's paid, that's just dead on the spot. I can't believe they didn't learn from that. That's the part that makes me nervous, is that like they did it again. Like, this must be free, or it'll be dead. I will literally say that with chess right now. The Battle Royale will be completely dead in 3 to 6 months if it's not free. With zero chance of survival also.
There's a bad track record with Ripple Effect releasing something and not really supporting it like it should be. Portal.
My thing with that, now that we've heard this, is I wonder if that's just because they thought, okay, like, let's not try to fix Portal. Let's just go in on this BR. That's my only kind of, not a guess, because I don't think that's necessarily what happened, but that's my only hope, I guess, is that they just said, all right, Portal, like this, the overall 2042 just didn't work. So let's just move on. Let's just get the next one, right? So whether that happened or not, I'm sure it probably didn't, and I'm getting my hopes up, but I hope that, because the thing with Ripple Effect is that they're the team I trust the most of all of them, because they were
because they were previously
they
Dice
always
LA.
Just killed it. Every single thing they did was always arguably better than Dice Stockholm, because they came in with the live service, and that's where we all know Battlefield succeeds, is the after launch stuff. So ironically, they're the team I actually trust the most. And to be honest, I hope the game launches, and then instead of it just being like Ripple Effect just works on BR and Dice just works on Battlefield, I hope that they all kind of work together and everything's getting equal love. Because I'd hate either the BR to get heaps of updates and the core game doesn't, or vice versa. I just think that they need to all be working in tandem. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But like you said, it's hard to tell, because I say all that about Ripple Effect, but Portal Yeah, Portal.
They left our boy out to die.
Yep. They left it out to the vultures and just, it had so much potential, man. I still feel quite, like, I almost wish that never happened and then they could do that for this game. Imagine if the game launched well and stuff and then it had that, we'd be like, oh my God, this is it. We're back.
Imagine Portal meets Battle Royale. That could be interesting.
That would be, and you know what? That's something that they could do. There's no reason they can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could even they could just like rebrand. They could just call the Battle Royale mode Portal. Like they could just call it Battlefield Portal instead of like Battlefield Battle Royale, because it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And yeah, they could just have it as this
BFBR.
This weird like multiverse situation, because obviously a Battle Royale is unrealistic. Like, why is all this gas coming in to the center? You know, it doesn't make sense. So they can just have it this crazy, stupid multiverse type of situation where they bring back different eras and, you know, like imagine having seasonal. It wouldn't be every season because the maps are too big, but say like once per year, which is usually how other BRs do it. We get a new map and it's like the Battlefield 4 map, and they've jumbled all the Battlefield 4 maps into the big BR map. And then the next season's a Battlefield 1, you know, like, that would be amazing. I had never even considered that, but a Portal-esque BR, that now you're selling me. Now I'm like, oh, yeah, do that.
Well, that's the thing here. Like, the ability for Battlefield to do something interesting is there. They have a wealth of experience. They have a huge catalog that they can draw on when it comes to stuff like this. And there's so much potential for them to do something so unique if they embrace the history that they've had. And obviously, you have Ripple Effect, who had that history, and they're able to bring something that was very interesting, leveraging the history with Battlefield 2042 and Portal. But the rest of the game, not so much, because a lot of the teams were very new when it comes to Battlefield. A lot of them coming on after Battlefield 5 had come out. So there's a lot of stuff like that that is quite interesting when we look at it from that perspective. But there's so much that they can do. And I'm so excited for the potential that they could do if they made a battle royale that makes sense within Battlefield. If they made something that is core to the Battlefield experience in a way that it needs desperately.
Yeah, so. It's going to be a very fun watch to see how they handle this. Just because this feels like a kind of culmination of they've had so many learning opportunities, and sometimes they don't tend to learn from their mistakes, but things like Firestorm and then Hazard Zone, and now they're going to go back to a BR apparently. Like, there's just a lot of learning that can be done there, and if they nail it all, then I think they could be onto something, but it's, it makes me nervous whether they have learned or not.
Yeah. What do you think about them ditching 60 or 128 players for just 64?
Yeah, I'm very keen for that. I think, and that's where a battle royale could, you know, that's just still your bigger game mode. I hope that they would have like 128 or 150 players in that and have it like really big. But I think, I just think 64 players just works better. And like, don't get me wrong, do a limited time mode every couple months where there's just some, absolute chaos game mode that's just.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they could call it, but like a kind of a throwback to 2042 of like, okay, we know this doesn't work well, but like, let's just do it. Because I think that type of thing for a limited time mode is fun. I think it's just when it's the core game, it just had so many issues.
Small scale map, large scale players.
Yeah, something like that, where it's like a map this size, but you just double the players. Like that sounds fun to me because it's a limited time thing. You don't, if it sucks, go back to the core modes. That doesn't matter. But yeah, for the core game, that's how it should be, and I personally think it should never change. It should be 64 players forever. I think that's the formula that it feels like they kept increasing it year on year with the old ones. It used to be, I want to say Bad Company 2 wasn't even 32. I want to say it was like 24 in that game, and then it went to 32 players in Battlefield 3, I think, and then it went up to 64 it might have even been. No, it would have been Battlefield 4. I was going to say it might have even been at the end of Battlefield 3, but Anyway, they've just slowly increased it, and they all felt like good increases, but we tried the loss on it didn't work. So yeah, I just think now when you do that, you're entering into like MMO type of games. It's not a multiplayer shooter. You're entering into like just stupid amount. Like at that point, you have one player on the other team who never even gets remotely close to another player on the other team. Whereas I think this amount of players, like everyone on the map's kind of at some point going to see every other player on the team. So I just think this is the perfect amount. And I really liked what Vince said about the map design too, that they want to make it like well crafted for that size, and that it's not. I think he even mentioned something about like how they had big open areas and stuff in 2042 and hell, even Battlefield 5. But now they don't want to have just like big areas for tanks. It's about making vehicles play well in the infantry focused maps, which is literally what you and I have been saying for so long now. Like, make the map.
Does he actually listen to the podcast?
Make the map for infantry first, because, and like vehicle players might be like, oh, that's unfair. Like whatever. The majority of the players per lobby, like 90% of every player is an infantry player. So make it for the infantry first, because there's only so many tanks and stuff you can have. You don't need to design it for... If there's only 2 tanks per team, why are you designing a map around that? And then what's everyone else doing? Like, why are we involved? Just make tank warfare if you want to do that. But I just think they need to focus on the infantry. And still, I'm not saying like exclude vehicles, because that's a key part of Battlefield. You need to implement them into the maps, which is how it always used to be. The vehicles never felt like the focal point in the old Battlefields. They felt like a cool added touch that was still a huge part of the game, but it felt like it was made for infantry first, and that's how it should be literally every time, because this isn't a vehicle simulator. It's a FPS that just happens to have vehicles in it.
I am, as we all know, very anti vehicle. I'm fine if they are, like you said, they need to be a piece of the pie, but they don't need to be the whole meal kind of thing. Like, if you want to play a vehicle game, go play a vehicle game. Like, Battlefield needs to have vehicles to have that large scale, I guess. But it doesn't need to be the main design, and I feel like they definitely preferred vehicles in 2042 than they should have.
Yeah, 100%. Like they felt like they were put on a pedestal kind of thing, where it was like, this is the, and I guess, they're going for larger scale, all out warfare. I get it. I get that in real war, there are a lot of vehicles. There's a lot of choppers. There's a lot of tanks and all that. I get that, but this isn't real war. We're making a video game, and most people buy these games for the shooter elements as a first person shooter. If you want to make or if you want to play solely as a tank, then go buy it. There's plenty of vehicle simulators out there, so just go play one of them instead. But that's not what these games are meant to be, and I'm glad that they've realised that, because that was probably my biggest issue with 2042, is just the way the maps were designed. It felt like they made a vehicle sandbox where it was really fun for tanks and all that, and not to say it was perfect for them either, but like, it felt focused on them, and then they're like, all right, we should put some little small areas in here for players as well, which is like, in a 128 player lobby, it's like 110 of those players were infantry, and there was like 12 people playing in a vehicle. So I don't know how it ever got to that point, how that ever became the focus is kind of strange. I feel like they almost looked at it a bit like Battlefront, where, to be fair, like, a lot of the focus is put on heroes, but that's Star Wars heroes. That's quite different than a tank. Like, no one cares about a tank. Everyone cares about Darth Vader, so it's kind of different.
And then final thing, I think that we have to cover. I know how much you love specialists, Sammy. How are you feeling with this news? Are you okay? Do we need to I'm
devastated.
Do I need to send someone over there?
You do, yeah. I'm so torn that they would get rid of my favorite addition ever to the Battlefield franchise. No, I will say I'm not opposed to them having
They're
characters.
Fine.
It's just give us the class system. That's my issue. I don't care if we pick a class and then our skins are like characters, similar to how COD do it, where you can pick your Captain Price or Ghost or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Or,
because
you know,
that
like the
gives us-
legendary skins that they had in
Yeah.
Battlefield 5.
that was fine. I bought some of them. Like that was enough to make me go, oh, that guy looks really cool. I'm gonna buy that. There was
Yeah.
the skins with like gas masks, and they had like they were half on fire and stuff. And I was like, that looks sick. I'm buying that.
Yeah.
So like, I'm all for having. A lot of people in the Battlefield community are really big on like the faceless character, and I get it, and I think that should be an option for people if you just want like
Yeah.
the stereotypical soldier with a helmet and you can't see their face, you don't know their name, and it's just a random soldier. That's fine, but also I'm not opposed to having like there really is no characters in Battlefield that are like classics. I would say Irish is literally like the only one, and I guess some of the Bad Company 2 ones, but they're a bit older, and like most people these days wouldn't know who they are. So I'm fine with them having the characters in there and try and give us some memorable faces and memorable characters that we fall in love with. But doing it the way they did it, it didn't work. So I'm glad they're getting rid of that. Whether this means like, because he straight up said no specialist, I assume that means we're going back to like faceless soldiers. But yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes, because I'm not opposed to having like, not to say McKay, because we all hate McKay, but like someone like that where it's just like someone we know, and you can pick the assault class and he's just one of the possible characters that you can choose.
Yeah.
And he has no difference between him or picking Falk. There's just no difference except a skin. Like, I'm fine with that, but I'm very glad that we're going back to classes. That's Battlefield, and they look, I don't want to roast them too much for trying. I think it's fine to try new things. So I'm not even like annoyed that they tried changing things up. It just didn't work, and I'm glad that they've acknowledged that and said, nah, like that's not the way to go. Let's go back to what we were doing.
So I think you bring up a good point. I think the real thing that people are misidentifying when they complain about specialists is the fact that they want to feel like a soldier. They want to feel like the average person in a war. And I think people are misattributing the fact that they want to be a quote-unquote faceless soldier, because we all connect to people and stories. I think the thing that people really want, and it's besides the part of the community that was just like incredibly sexist for Battlefield 5, there's a similar backlash of like, this takes me out of the belief that I'm in a battlefield, that I am part of a war and I can really get into, is the fact that they want to feel like a normal soldier. And when you can zip line all across the map and you have a special ability and this happens and this happens and your personality is overtly present, that, I think, is the real problem with specialists. It's not the fact that you recognize them. It's the fact that they are too visual, that they are too much of an impact on the game than they should be to the average Battlefield player.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't want to see any... I'm all for like cool little gadgets and stuff like that, but I don't want to see zip lines, and it needs to be I feel like this needs to be a very grounded Battlefield where it feels a bit more realistic. And not to say, like, I think the whole realism thing with Battlefield is always overdone, where people go, oh, it's meant to be it's not meant to be realistic, it's a freaking arcade shooter, it's large scale. But like, I do agree that when it feels more realistic, it just feels, I don't know how to describe it. It feels more, it makes me love the games more. I think back to Battlefield 1. I don't think that's necessarily the best game if you just remove the setting and everything. I don't think it's necessarily the best Battlefield, but I always look at it as like, that's my favorite, and I think it's up there as one of the best because it's so like gritty and grounded in reality. Granted, none of us know what World War One was like. It's probably completely unrealistic, but it feels realistic. It feels like that is probably pretty similar to how a World War One would feel, albeit obviously people weren't running around like, the gameplay is different than a real war. But the setting and stuff, it just felt dark.
The gameplay of war.
Imagine in an actual war, people just sprinting around corners. Like, that obviously is very unrealistic. So in terms of that, because people, that's the area where people go, oh, but Battlefield's meant to be like almost a military simulator. And it's like, it's not. It's really not. You can't jump around corners in real war and just shoot people. You got to look at games like Arma and stuff where that is realistically as close as any game has really been to being real, where you get shot like once or twice and you're down. Like that's how it is. But yeah, I just think this one needs to be just believable. Like flying around don't get me wrong, Sundance and McKay were actually my two mains in 2042, but it's so unrealistic seeing someone flying around in a freaking wingsuit and just pulling up. You're just like sliding into battle and just throwing a C4 and then jumping off a cliff and blowing it up. Like that's just not real. That is not, no one has ever done that. That's not how it works. The zip line is the same thing. It's just like you're on the ground, 3 seconds later, you're just up on a roof. That's not how real life works. And so I think having it grounded in that sense, and like you said, I think that is a key issue with the specialists, is that they all felt, a bit too unrealistic and also just annoying. A lot of them were just annoying. Like McKay was too happy to be, we're in like the most depressing war, like the whole world. It's like literally the end of the world. And he's just like, oh man, I haven't had enough cups of coffee today. Like, shut up. No, that's not how you should be talking. So yeah, that's my key thing for the overall vibe of this game. I want it to feel like a Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, where it's like very realistic in the setting sense. Again, gameplay wise, not so much, but give me that sort of thing instead of people ziplining around. And that was a little bit too far for me. I think, not that it was not fun, it was enjoyable. It just didn't feel like a Battlefield game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I think there's a way that you can have your cake and eat it too, and I think what they're aiming to do has potential for that. I think they should go the Battlefield 5 route, where you have these character skins that are consistent across the whole reach. But like this false belief that by the time we get to 2042, that's when we've discovered the technology to have like flight wings and kind of like enhanced soldiers and all of these various different types of things, I think takes away from the experience most people want out of Battlefield. There's a reason we haven't had a Battlefield 2142 since that game came out. You don't go to Battlefield for sci-fi adventure. You go for it for like, I want to have an immersive war experience and also have some little extra pieces. Like that's why everyone loves the near modern or like near future versions of these shooter games. Like you can get away with a lot when you pretend that it's, we get a lot of technological advancements because we're 5 years in the future type of thing.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about this era, is that if you made, if this next Battlefield was set in 2015, then we have to sort of stick to what they had, albeit I guess with Battlefield 1 that's untrue because like they didn't have automatic guns back then and we did in the game. But like if they made a game set in even 2024, we know what we have now. So seeing some sort of futuristic thing in the game it makes you go, oh, that doesn't feel real. Whereas setting it 5 years in the future, if there's something a little bit goofy, a little bit out there, it still feels fine to me. So I think the setting like 2027 to 2030-ish, that sounds perfect to me. Like I could not be happy with that sort of setting.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be what most fans want out of a Battlefield. Give me a little bit of suspension of disbelief type thing, and let's see where it goes after that. Like, but let me have a grounded experience, and that's ultimately what I go to Battlefield for over something like a Fortnite, over something like an Apex, and I mean at this point over something like a Call of Duty.
Yeah, like that's the thing with COD, is that's gone. I think that's a big issue for me too, is that has gone down that like unrealistic path where there's like the anime girls and stuff running around. And it's just like,
yeah,
in a different type of game like a Fortnite, that's fine. But COD used to be a bit more grounded and a bit more, I don't know, just it was very similar to Battlefield back in the old, Modern Warfare, the original Modern Warfare game, for example. That was like straight up realistic outside of gameplay, but like the setting and stuff, everything felt real. So I think that is a big thing that they need to focus on with this one. And I mean, everything we've seen, the concept art and stuff so far, it looks exactly as I kind of would want it to. But until we actually see, I probably said the same thing when we would have heard about Battlefield 5 and then like the hook hand stuff on the first trailer. Then you go, oh, this isn't what, this is not what we were expecting. So we have to wait and see, but it definitely sounds, I think, what we all kind of want, or at least the majority of us anyway.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I think this is a good direction for us as Battlefield fans. And I'm glad that it seems like they're finally paying attention to what we all want to see. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, or contact at uplinkpodcast.com if you're listening to this wherever you find podcasts. As always, check out Sammy Boy's YouTube channels and check out Star Wars Uplink if you're interested in some Star Wars content. As always, we'll see you later, video gamers.